can do is just tell the truth and trust in the American people that over time they're going to know what the truth is.
Yes, it is time for the truth. Right here, right now. This is the Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives. With your host, John Matthews.
The latter-day prophet.
Baying against the hypocrisies of our time.
And Joe Hakos.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
The Conservative Syndicate is comprised of some of the most informed pundits and activists available today. Together, we seek to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state through education, information, and engagement on the religion of politics and the politics of religion. And now, your host on the globally syndicated Conservative Syndicate, John Matthews and Joe Hakos.
And how are we doing out there? All across this great land and around our republic, around the world, we're glad to have you with us. I am your host, John Matthews, along with Joe Hakos, and you are listening to the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives, and we're glad to have you with us with this special edition of the Conservative Syndicate. We are offering you, at this moment in time, pre-recorded sessions here. We just decided that it was time to highlight some of the things that have made the history of America so great, have contributed primarily to the concept and idealism behind American exceptionalism, and we're so grateful that you took the time to join us. This is a pre-recorded session, so if you're tuning in live to hear us, you won't hear us live today, but you'll still get just as much education, information, and engagement as if we were sitting here live right now behind the microphones. We just decided that in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we are so grateful to our God that he has heard our prayers to stop the arterial bleeding known as progressivism, and we hope he continues to provide us the path back to becoming once again one nation under God. So we decided, for your educational and entertainment purposes, to provide you with a series called Great Speeches and Debates of Days Past, a series of speeches and debates from great conservative thinkers and representatives. Tonight, we're going to offer you a couple of speeches. Margaret Thatcher's address to the joint session of Congress on February 20th, 1985, where she spoke on an array of topics and issues from a conservative perspective. Among them, the idealism behind conservatism itself, the history of the Conservative Party, defense, the economy, foreign trade, and, believe it or not, terrorism. So without any further ado, we want to get to Margaret Thatcher's address to the joint session of Congress on February 20th, 1985. We hope you enjoy, but much more importantly, we hope you learn.
Members of the Congress, it is my great privilege, and I deem it a high honor and personal pleasure, to present to you the Right Honorable Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, distinguished members of Congress, on this, one of the most moving occasions of my life, my first words must be to say thank you for granting me this rare privilege of addressing a joint meeting of the United States Congress. My thoughts turn to three earlier occasions when a British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, has been honoured by a call to address both houses. Among his many remarkable gifts, Winston held a special advantage here. Through his American mother, he had ties of blood with you. Alas for me, these are not matters we can readily arrange for ourselves. Those three occasions deserve to be recalled because they serve as lamps along a dark road which our people trod together. And they remind us what an extraordinary period of history the world has passed through between that time and ours. And they tell us what later generations in both our countries sometimes find hard to grasp, why past associations bind us so closely. Winston Churchill's vision of a union of mind and purpose between the English-speaking peoples was to form the mainspring of the West. No one of my generation can forget that America has been the principal architect of a peace in Europe which has lasted 40 years. Given this shield of the United States, we have been granted the opportunities to build a concept of Europe beyond the dreams of our fathers. A Europe which seemed unattainable amid the mud and slaughter of the First World War and the suffering and sacrifice of the Second. When, in the spring of 1945, the guns fell silent, General Eisenhower called our soldiers to a service of thanksgiving. In the order of service was the famous prayer of Sir Francis Drake. O Lord God, when thou givest to thy servants to endeavour any great matter, grant us to know that it is not the beginning but the continuing of the same until it be thoroughly finished, which yieldeth the true glory. On this day, close to the 40th anniversary of that service and of peace in Europe, one of the longest periods without war in all our history, I should like to recall those words and acknowledge how faithfully America has fulfilled them. For our deliverance from what might have befallen us, I would not have us leave our gratitude to the tributes of history. The debt the free peoples of Europe owe to this nation, generous with its bounty, willing to share its strength, seeking to protect the weak, is incalculable. We thank and salute you. Of course, in the years which separate us from the time when Winston Churchill last spoke to Congress, there have been disappointments as well as hopes fulfilled. The continued troubles in the Middle East, famine and depression in Africa, genocide in Southeast Asia, the brutal occupation of Afghanistan, the undiminished agony of tortured Poland, and above all, the continued and continuing division of the European continent. From these shores, it may seem to some of you that by comparison with the risks and sacrifice which America has borne through 4 decades, and the courage with which you have shouldered unwanted burdens, Europe has not fully matched your expectations. Bear with me if I dwell for a moment on the Europe to which we now belong. It is not the Europe of ancient Rome, of Charlemagne, of Bismarck. We who are alive today have passed through perhaps the greatest transformation of human affairs on the continent of Europe since the fall of Rome. In but a short chapter of its long history, Europe lost the position which it had occupied for 2,000 years. And it is your history as much as ours. For 5 centuries, that small continent had extended its authority over islands and continents the world over. For the first 40 years of this century, there were 7 great powers: the United States, Great Britain, Germany, France, Russia, Japan, Italy. Of those 7, 2 now tower over the rest: the United States and the Soviet Union. To that swift and historic change, Europe, a Europe of many different histories and many different nations, has had to find a response. It's not been an easy passage to blend this conflux of nationalism, patriotism, sovereignty into a European community. Yet I think that our children and grandchildren may see this period, these these birth pangs of a new Europe more clearly than we do now. They will see it as a visionary chapter in the creation of a Europe able to share the load alongside you. Do not doubt the firmness of our resolve in this march towards this goal. But don't underestimate what we already do. Today, out of the forces of the alliance in Europe, 95% of the divisions, 85% of the tanks, 80% of the combat aircraft, and 70% of the fighting ships are provided, manned, and paid for by the European allies. And Europe has more than 3 million men under arms and more still in reserve. We have to. We're right in the front line. The frontier of freedom cuts across our continent. Members of Congress, the defense of that frontier is as vital to you as it is to us. It is fashionable for some commentators to speak of the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, as though they were somehow of equal worth and equal significance. Mr. Speaker, that is a travesty of the truth. The Soviet Union has never concealed its real aim. In the words of Mr. Brezhnev, the total triumph of all socialism all over the world is inevitable. For this triumph, we shall struggle with no lack of effort. Indeed, there has been no lack of effort. Contrast this with the record of the West. We do not aim at domination, at hegemony in any part of the world. Even against those who oppose and who would destroy our ideas, we plot no aggression. Of course we are ready to fight the battle of ideas with all the vigor at our command. But we do not try to impose our system on others. We do not believe that force should be the final arbiter in human affairs. We threaten no one. Indeed, the Alliance has given a solemn assurance to the world. None of our weapons will be used except in response to attack. In talking to the Soviet Union, we find great difficulty in getting this message across. They judge us by their ambitions. They cannot conceive of a powerful nation not using its power for expansion or subversion. And yet, they should remember that when after the last war the United States had a monopoly of nuclear weapons, she never once exploited her superiority. No country ever used such great power more responsibly or with such restraint. I wonder what would have befallen us in Western Europe and Great Britain if that monopoly had been in Soviet hands. Mr. Speaker, wars are not caused by the build-up of weapons. They are caused when an aggressor believes he can achieve his objectives at an acceptable price. The war of 1939 was not caused by an arms race. It sprang from a tyrant's belief that other countries lacked the means and the will to resist him. Remember Bismarck's phrase, "Do I want war? Of course not. I want victory." Our task is to see the potential aggressors from whatever quarter understand plainly that the capacity and the resolve of the West would deny them victory in war, and that the price they would pay would be intolerable.
This is the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. We hope you are enjoying tonight's segment of great speeches and debates of days past. We'll be right back after these brief messages. A healthy attitude toward politics will always be relentlessly cynical. TheConservativeSyndicate.net, doing our part to keep America healthy.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-790-5960. That's 1-800-790-5960. Again, 1-800-790-5960. Call now.
Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, auto pay, and paperless billing and other restrictions apply. If you can't see the difference, why pay the difference? Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Only Dish brings you the best in entertainment for less than $20 a month. Cut the cable and don't get directed. Switch to Dish because at just $19.99, Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. It's so simple. The same channels cost less with Dish. So since you can't see the difference, don't pay the difference. Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Get premium movie channels free for 3 months, starting at just $19.99. Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. Call now to save with Dish. Dial 1-800-600-1645. That's 1-800-600-1645. The same channels for less than $20 a month. Dish. Call 1-800-600-1645 for details.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoso. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoso Live Daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decisions concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardosolive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardosolive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did.
Attention taxpayers. If you've received a notice from the IRS or state, do not ignore it. It's also a big mistake to try and handle your tax problem on your own. If you owe back taxes, it's a fact that the government has the power to take everything you own, including your home, business, wages, savings, and your freedom. But here's the good news. There's a special toll-free tax hotline set up especially for you. This tax hotline will tell you about new programs that are geared to help you dramatically settle, reduce, or eliminate what you owe. But you have to call now. Take down this number or put it in your cell phone. But call 866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959. When you call, you get free information on how you can reduce or eliminate back taxes, including penalties and interest. You can also be helped if you have unfiled returns, a tax lien, wage garnishment, bank levy, or if you have been entered into a payment plan but can't make the payments. Don't make the big mistake in thinking you can ignore or handle your tax problem on your own. You can stop the collection process immediately. Call this special tax hotline today for free info at 1-866-761-0959. That's 1-866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959.
This is the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. We hope you are enjoying tonight's segment of great speeches and debates of days past. And now let's return to Margaret Thatcher's address to the joint session of Congress on February 20th, 1985.
That is the basis of deterrence. And it is the same whatever the nature of the weapons. For let us never forget the horrors of conventional wars and the hideous sacrifice of those who have suffered in them. Our task is not only to prevent nuclear war, but but to prevent conventional war as well. No one understood the importance of deterrence more clearly than Winston Churchill, when in his last speech to you, he said, "Be careful above all things not to let go of the atomic weapon until you are sure, and more than sure, that other means of preserving peace are in your hands." 33 years on, those weapons are still keeping the peace. But since then, technology has moved on. And if we are to maintain deterrence, as we must, it is essential that our research and capacity don't fall behind the work being done by the Soviet Union. That is why I firmly support President Reagan's decision to pursue research into defense against ballistic nuclear missiles, the Strategic Defense Initiative. Indeed, I hope that our own scientists will share in this research. The United States and the Soviet Union are both signatories to the 1972 Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, a treaty without any terminal date. Nothing in that treaty precludes research. But should that research, on either side, lead to the possible deployment of new defense systems, that would be a matter for negotiation under the treaty. Mr. Speaker, but despite our differences with the Soviet Union, we have to talk with them. But we have one overriding interest in common, that never again should there be a conflict between our peoples. We hope, too, that we can achieve security with far fewer weapons than we have today, and at lower cost. And thanks to the skillful diplomacy of Secretary Shultz, negotiations on arms control open in Geneva on the 12th of March. They will be of immense importance to millions. They will be intricate, complex, and demanding. And we should not expect too much too soon. We must recognize that we shall face a Soviet political offensive designed to sow differences among us, calculated to create infirmity of purpose, to impair resolve, and even to arouse fear in the hearts of our people. Hope is such a precious commodity in the world today that some are tempted to buy it at too high a price. We shall have to resist the muddled arguments of those who have been induced to believe that Russia's intentions are benign and that ours are suspect, or who would have us simply give up our defenses in the hope that where we led, others would follow. As we learned cruelly in the 1930s, from good intentions can come tragic results. Let us be under no illusions. It is our strength and not their goodwill that has brought the Soviet Union to the negotiating table in Geneva. Mr. Speaker, we know that our alliance, if it holds firm, cannot be defeated, but it could be outflanked. It is among the unfree and the underfed that subversion takes root. As Ethiopia demonstrated, those people get precious little help from the Soviet Union and its allies. The weapons which they pour in bring neither help nor hope to the hungry. It is the West which heard their cries. It is the West which responded massively to the heart-rending starvation in Africa. It is the West which has made a unique contribution to the uplifting of hundreds of millions of people from poverty, illiteracy, and disease. But the problems of the Third World are not only those of famine. They face also a mounting burden of debt, falling prices for primary products, protectionism by the industrialized countries. Some of the remedies are in the hands of the developing countries themselves. They can open their markets to productive investment. They can pursue responsible policies of economic adjustment. We should respect the courage and resolve with which so many of them have tackled their special problems. But we also have a duty to help. How can we help? First and most important, by keeping our markets open to them. Protectionism is a danger to all our trading partnerships. And for many countries, trade is even more important than aid. And so we in Britain support President Reagan's call for a new GATT round. The current strength of the dollar, which is causing so much difficulty for some of your industries, creates obvious pressures for special cases, for new trade barriers to a free market. I am certain that your administration is right to resist such pressures. To give in to them would betray the millions in the developing world, to say nothing of the strains on your other trading partners. The developing countries need our markets as we need theirs. And we can't preach economic adjustment to them and refuse to practice it at home. And second, we must remember that the way in which we in the developed countries manage our economies determines whether the world's financial framework is stable, it determines the level of interest rates, it determines the amount of capital available for sound investment the world over, and it determines whether or not the poor countries can service their past loans, let alone compete for new ones. And those are the reasons why we support so strongly your efforts to reduce the budget deficit. No other country in the world can be immune from its effects. Such is the influence of the American economy on us all. We in Europe have watched with admiration the burgeoning of this mighty American economy. There is a new mood in the United States. A visitor feels it at once. The resurgence of your self-confidence and your national pride is almost tangible. Now the sun is rising in the West. For many years, our vitality in Britain was blunted by excessive reliance on the state. Our industries were nationalized, controlled, and subsidized in a way that yours never were. We're having to recover the spirit of enterprise which you never lost. Many of the policies you are following are the policies we are following. You have brought inflation down, so have we. You've declared war on regulations and controls, so have we. Our civil service is now smaller than at any time since the war, and controls on pay, prices, dividends, foreign exchange, all are gone. You have encouraged small business, so often the source of tomorrow's jobs. So have we. But above all, we're carrying out the largest program of denationalization in our history.
This is the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. We hope you are enjoying tonight's segment of great speeches and debates of days past. We'll be right back after these brief messages.
Red State Talk Radio, WRS,
Hey, I'll make you a deal. Give me 60 seconds and I'll give you directions to the Fountain of Youth. Okay, I'm joking. Well, kind of joking. No fountains, but youth, I got. Nature's Youth and their premier anti-aging product, Nature's Youth RSF. With your sensible diet and exercise plan, Nature's Youth RSF can help you look and feel better. RSF is an all-natural amino acid supplement that supports your body to naturally increase HGH levels without any synthetic hormones. And elevated HGH levels can contribute to increased energy, improved libido, reduced body fat, and improved exercise capacity. Let's be honest. Who doesn't want to look and feel younger? Visit the newly designed website at naturesyouth.com or call 800-333-6923. That's 800-333-6923 and like them on Facebook and you'll be included in contest and exclusive offers. What a deal. Oh, speaking of deals, my time's about up. 800-333-6923 or naturesyouth.com. Who needs a fountain anyway? Call today.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
When I had a heart attack at 42, I was not sure what the future held. But a year later, the doctors could find nothing wrong with me and took me off all my medication. What did I do? I took a herbal mixture of garlic, cayenne, and a few other herbs mixed in liquid form. I now call this Extendovite. I would have never believed that a few simple herbs could actually change my life like they did. Now it's your turn to see what the powers of garlic and cayenne can do for you. For only $69.95 plus shipping and handling for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid, you too can begin on your path to better health. For more information, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit our website at heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
I've owned my company for 14 years now, and I can tell you that payroll is a 4-letter word. I hate doing it. It eats up hours I don't have, and it costs me money I could be saving. But my accountant's too expensive, and I'm not sure who to call, but I know I need help.
We're Paychex, and we take all the hassles out of small business payroll. We save you time and money. It's easy. Call, fax, or give us your payroll information securely online, and we take care of the rest. We calculate the correct taxes, manage payments and direct deposits. We even send out your checks. Payroll doesn't need to be a 4-letter word anymore. We're so sure that we can save you time and money that we'll give you a month's payroll free. Just for calling 877-663-3830. Get 1 month's payroll for free. Call Paychex right now. 877-663-3830. That's 877-663-3830.
Hey, I don't back anybody unless I believe in them. And I do believe in the value of investing in gold and silver. And the company I trust to buy my gold and silver from is Swiss America. I've been working with them for nearly a decade. I trust them, and you can too. Swiss America will help you sort through and find the best options available when you're considering investing in gold and silver coins. Listen, for over 30 years, Swiss America has been offering Americans what they want in their investments: safety, liquidity, quality, reliability, and a potential profit. Gold and silver have a place in every investor's portfolio. So, why not let Swiss America help you diversify your investment portfolio now? Call now for free information. 800-978-3907, 800-978-3907, 800-978-3907, 800-978-3907.
Hey, Bugsy, you hear the news about Vinny?
Yeah, it's a real shame. He owed money to the IRS and they finally cut up with him.
Just like Al Capone.
If the IRS can get to Capone, imagine what they can do to little old Vinny, huh?
Poor cat, he was on top of the world. Then bada boom, bada bing.
What Vinny needs now is an offer he can't refuse.
Hey, you got a tax problem? Does the IRS claim you owe them a bunch of dough? They can get you too. So call the tax relief line now and learn if you qualify to negotiate your $10,000 plus IRS tax debt for up to a 75% savings. Don't be like Al or Vinny and get busted. Make this free call now. Learn how you may be able to pay the IRS less.
Call now. 866-657-8474. 866-657-8474. 866-657-8474, 866-657-8474.
This is the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. We hope you are enjoying tonight's segment of great speeches and debates of days past. And now let's return to Margaret Thatcher's address to the joint session of Congress on February 20th, 1985.
Just a few years ago in Britain, privatization was thought to be a pipe dream. Now it's a reality, and a popular one. Our latest success was the sale of British Telecommunications. It was the largest share issue ever to be brought to the market on either side of the Atlantic. Some 2 million people bought shares. Members of Congress, that is what capitalism is. A system which brings wealth to the many and not just to the few. United Kingdom economy is in its 4th year of recovery, slower than yours, but positive recovery. We've not yet shared your success in bringing down unemployment, although we are creating many new jobs. But output, investment, and standard of living are all at record levels, and profits are well up. And the pound, it is too low. But whatever the proper international level of sterling, it's a marvelous time for Americans not only to visit Britain, but to invest with us. And many are. America is by far the largest direct investor in Britain, and I'm delighted to say that Britain is the largest direct investor in the United States. The British economy has an underlying strength, and like you, we use our strength and resolve to carry out our duties to our allies and to the wider world. We were the first country to station cruise missiles on our territory. Britain led the rest. In proportion to our population, we stationed the same number of troops as you in Germany. In Central America, we keep troops stationed in Belize at that government's request. That is our contribution to sustaining democracy in a part of the world so vital to the United States. We have troops in Cyprus and in the South Atlantic, and at your request, a small force in Sinai. And British servicemen are now on loan to some 30 foreign countries. We were alongside you in Beirut. We work with you in the Atlantic and in the Indian Oceans. Our Navy is on duty across the world. Mr. Speaker, Britain meets her responsibilities in the defense of freedom throughout the world, and she will go on doing so. But members of Congress, closer to home, there is a threat to freedom, both savage and insidious. Both our countries have suffered at the hands of terrorists. We have both lost some of our best young lives, and I have lost some close and dear friends. Free, strong democratic societies will not be driven by gunmen to abandon freedom or democracy. The problems of the Middle East will not be solved by the cold-blooded murder of American servicemen in Lebanon, nor by the murder of American civilians on a hijacked aircraft. Nor will the problems of Northern Ireland be solved by the assassin's gun or bomb. Garrett Fitzgerald and I, and our respective governments, are united in condemning terrorism. We recognize the differing traditions and identities of the two parts of the community of Northern Ireland, the nationalist and the unionist. We seek a political way forward acceptable to them both, which respects them both. So long as a majority of people of Northern Ireland wish to remain part of the United Kingdom, their wishes will be respected. If ever there were to be a majority in favour of change, then I believe that our Parliament would respond accordingly. For that is the principle of consent, enshrined in your Constitution and an essential part of ours. There's no disagreement on this principle between the United Kingdom government and the government of the Republic of Ireland. Indeed, the four constitutional nationalist parties of Ireland, North and South, who came together to issue the New Ireland Forum report, made clear that any new arrangements could only come about by consent. And I welcome, too, their outright condemnation and total rejection of terrorism and all its works. Be under no illusions about the provisional IRA. They terrorize their own communities. They are the enemies of democracy and of freedom, too. Don't just take my word for it. Ask the government of the Irish Republic, where it is an offence even to belong to that organisation, as indeed it also is in Northern Ireland. I recognise and appreciate the efforts which have been made by the administration and Congress alike to bring home this message to American citizens who may be misled into making contributions to seemingly innocuous groups. The fact is, that money is used to buy the deaths of Irishmen north and south of the border, and 70% of those killed by the IRA are Irishmen. And that money buys the killing and wounding even of American citizens visiting our country. Garrett Fitzgerald, and I salute him for the very brave thing he did yesterday in passing a special law to see that money did not get to the IRA. Garrett Fitzgerald and I will continue to consult together in the quest for stability and peace in Northern Ireland. And we hope we will have your continued support for our joint efforts to find a way forward. Distinguished members of Congress, our two countries have a common heritage as well as a common language. It is no mere figure of speech to say that many of your most enduring traditions, representative government, habeas corpus, trial by jury, a system of constitutional checks and balances, stem from our own small islands. But they are as much your lawful inheritance as ours. You did not borrow these traditions. You took them with you because they were already your own. Human progress is not automatic. Civilization has its ebbs and flows. But if we look at the history of the last 500 years, whether in the field of art, science, technology, religious tolerance, or in the practice of politics, the conscious inspiration of it all has been the belief and practice of freedom under law, freedom disciplined by morality, under a law perceived to be just. I cannot conclude this address without recalling words made immortal by your great President Abraham Lincoln in his second inaugural address, when he looked beyond an age when men fought and strove towards a more peaceful future. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Members of Congress, may our two kindred nations go forward together, sharing Lincoln's vision, firm of purpose, strong in faith, warm of heart, as we approach the third millennium of the Christian era. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
We hope you enjoyed Margaret Thatcher's address to the joint session of Congress on February 20th, 1985. We'll take a short break and then return to some remarks offered by Mrs. Thatcher over the years, just to round out this segment of the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. We'll be right back. There is an old saying, children should be seen but not heard. At no time is this more apparent than when politicians speak. TheConservativeSyndicate.net, the adult in the room. Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoso. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoso Live Daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decisions concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardosolive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardosolive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did. History affirms a vibrant civil society thrives on freedom of conscience, religion, and choice. Any society absent these qualities stifles individual responsibility and accountability, thus enslaving its people by denying them their potential for goodness, creativity, and altruism. To that extent, oppression, coercion, and totalitarianism are multiplied exponentially. To counter such outcomes, the American Freedom Alliance was formed. The AFA is a nonpartisan, non-aligned movement which promotes, defends, and upholds Western values and ideals. The Alliance strives to build an international coalition of citizens of the West who together promote and protect moral values, democracy, and freedom. To find out more and become part of this valuable asset in the preservation of freedom and all its rewards, contact us at AmericanFreedomAlliance.org. That's AmericanFreedomAlliance.org. Let freedom ring.
The first constituency to have a woman MP, Nancy Astor, and now the first woman Prime Minister, Lady Margaret Thatcher, is taking to the stage to offer her views on Europe and indeed, no doubt, lots of other issues. Let's hear her applause.
Chairman Francis, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for that wonderful welcome. It augurs well for the result. It's very good to be here this evening, campaigning for a Conservative victory in the enterprising port of Plymouth. Actually, I was told beforehand that my arrival was unscheduled, but on my way here, I passed a local cinema, and it turns out that you were expecting me after all, for the billboards read, "The Mummy Returns." It's good to be back. Dennis also has a high regard for this fine city. In fact, so fondly does he recall it, that he always ensures our cocktail cabinet is well stocked up with Plymouth gin. Dennis isn't here with me tonight, but he's certainly here in spirit. My friends, every general election tests character as well as policies, and this one is no exception. But our party is fortunate indeed Under William Hague's cool and gritty leadership, we have the right man with the right message. My friends, it's more than a decade since I was in the front line of politics, and I miss it a bit. That's why I'm back now. One thing hasn't changed, and I trust will never change. Ours is a party that knows what it stands for, is proud of its beliefs, and is in tune with the deepest instincts of the British people. We Conservatives changed Britain for the better, and we helped to change the world, bringing liberty to millions who'd never have known it. Moreover, let's admit it, we've changed our opponents, at least on the surface, and so made them electable, and that's tough. But we didn't, and we couldn't, make them believers in liberty or champions of enterprise. New Labour's main appeal, when you get down to it, is quite simply that it's not old Labour. And that's true as far as it goes. I had some respect for the old Labour Party, which stood for certain principles, wrong as they were. But today's Labour Party has no discernible principles at all. It is rootless, empty, and artificial. And when anything real or human surfaces despite the spin, it's the bitter, brawling bully that we hoped we'd seen the last of 20 years ago. Labour's election slogan, Ambitions for Britain, is of course half right. They are ambitious, but not, I'm afraid, for Britain. They're certainly ambitious to extend the power of the state. That's why year after year they have piled on taxes by stealth. The British people are paying £1 billion a week of extra tax for the privilege of keeping Messrs. Blair and Brown in Downing Street. What an incentive to evict them. Labour are also ambitious to draw more and more people into dependency, diminishing liberty, throttling choice. That's why the Chancellor took away mortgage tax relief. I insisted on having relief for mortgages because we want every person, every householder to become an owner. They've taken away the relief. They've taken away the relief on tax for marriage. They've taken away the relief for private health insurance. That's why he took £5 billion a year from those who put money into private pension schemes. We, in fact, had private pension schemes very well able to get tax relief. And that's why he plans to make more and more elderly people subject to the means test. He just can't stand people being independent. Notice he'll say he didn't take down the top rate of tax. No, he took away the tax, he'd increased the tax by stealth, by steadily taking away the reliefs from which most of us benefited if we wish to hire our own, if we wish to buy our own houses, or in fact to look after our own health. Above all, our new Labour masters have to strut the international stage. They love to strut the international stage. It's a great deal pleasanter than facing the wrath of outraged farmers, desperate hospital patients, or demoralized policemen. Mr. Blair says he wants to lead in Europe, but the price of that is that he's expected to lead Britain by the nose into the single currency, and he's prepared to do it. I would never be prepared to give up our own currency. The greatest issue in this election, indeed the greatest issue before our country, is whether Britain is to remain a free, independent nation state, or whether we are to be dissolved in a federal Europe. There are no half measures, there are no third ways, and there are no second choices. My friends, too many powers have already passed from our Parliament to the bureaucracy in Brussels. We must get them back, and above all, we must keep the pound. Keeping our currency is not, as Labour would have it, just a matter of economics. The economic case grows weaker as the euro grows sicker by the day. Now, a country which loses the power to issue its own currency is a country which has given up the power to govern itself. Such a country would no longer be free, and it would no longer be truly democratic, for its people could no longer determine their own future in national elections. My friends, to surrender the pound, to surrender our power to self-government, would betray all that past generations down the ages lived and died to defend. It would also be to turn our back on America, leader of the English-speaking peoples of the world, to whom Europe, let's remember, also owes its freedom. That is not our way, and where better to take a stand than here in Plymouth. Plymouth, England's historic opening to the world. Plymouth, from where Francis Drake, Walter Raleigh, and Captain Cook set out to take the ways of these islands to the uttermost bounds of the earth. Plymouth, from where the Pilgrim Fathers left in that cockle-shell vessel on a voyage which would create the most powerful force for freedom that the world has ever known, the United States of America. My friends, New Labour, in its shriveled heart, is embarrassed by our history, scornful of our achievement, oblivious of our legacy. They think that they can remove Britain's sovereignty, just as they put up Britain's taxes by stealth. They are wrong, but they are too arrogant and too remote to know it. So, my friends, a mighty burden rests on us. We have 16 days to shift opinion and to shake this rotten government to the core. That is our task. Let's go about it now. Thank you very much.
Stay with us right here at the Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives. We've got much more for you. We'll be right back.
America. It is put up or shut up time for our republic. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, we, the people of the United States of America, shall literally be choosing between life and death regarding the United States this election day. If you don't believe me, consider the fact that if the $20 trillion debt caused by wasteful federal government spending is not soon reversed, an economic collapse of monumental proportions could occur. President Obama's dangerous open borders policies have literally ushered in possibly millions of dangerous illegal immigrants and America-hating Muslim refugees. The FBI is investigating major pay-to-play scandals involving Hillary Clinton's foundation, and now her top 3 aides could soon face serious face time with the judge. Obamacare is threatening the very existence of good health care for you and I, and that's just scratching the surface. To put it bluntly, my fellow Americans, if Mrs. Clinton is elected, you can forget the Second Amendment, religious liberty, a safe, prosperous, and tranquil nation. It is time to put emotions aside and seek God's forgiveness for allowing this madness to envelop our nation, and do your part to help make America great again. I'm Ron Edwards.
A healthy attitude toward politics will always be relentlessly cynical. The Conservative Syndicate.net, doing our part to keep America healthy.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. Then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-790-5960. That's 1-800-790-5960. Again, 1-800-790-5960. Call now.
Limited time offer, 24-month commitment and credit qualification require cancellation fee, auto pay, and paperless billing and other restrictions apply. If you can't see the difference, why pay the difference? Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Only Dish brings you the best in entertainment for less than $20 a month. Cut the cable and don't get directed. Switch to Dish because at just $19.99, Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. It's so simple. The same channels cost less with Dish. So since you can't see the difference, don't pay the difference. Switch to Dish for the best deal in entertainment. Get premium movie channels free for 3 months, starting at just $19.99. Dish saves you every time you turn on the TV. Call now to save with Dish. Dial 1-800-600-1645. That's 1-800-600-1645. The same channels for less than $20 a month. Dish. Call 1-800-600-1645 for details.
Hey folks, if you're like me, you don't place a whole lot of trust in today's media for the real truth and facts regarding the volatile world of finance and politics. When I want the real scoop on money, I go to the most trusted source I know, my good friend and colleague, Bob Cardoso. Bob is a noted expert with a PhD in international finance who airs his nationally known, globally syndicated show, Robert Cardoso Live Daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. With Bob, you get the right information at the right time from someone who knows his business and can help you make the right decisions concerning yours. Again, Bob airs daily, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit his website at robertcardosolive.com for information regarding stations and topics. That's robertcardosolive.com. Check Bob out. You'll be glad you did.
Attention taxpayers. If you've received a notice from the IRS or state, do not ignore it. It's also a big mistake to try and handle your tax problem on your own. If you owe back taxes, it's a fact that the government has the power to take everything you own, including your home, business, wages, savings, and your freedom. But here's the good news. There's a special toll-free tax hotline set up especially for you. This tax hotline will tell you about new programs that are geared to help you dramatically settle, reduce, or eliminate what you owe. But you have to call now. Take down this number or put it in your cell phone. But call 866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959. When you call, you get free information on how you can reduce or eliminate back taxes, including penalties and interest. You can also be helped if you have unfiled returns, a tax lien, wage garnishment, bank levy, or if you've been entered into a payment plan but can't make the payments. Don't make the big mistake in thinking you can ignore or handle your tax problem on your own. You can stop the collection process immediately. Call this special tax hotline today for free info at 1-866-761-0959. That's 1-866-761-0959. 1-866-761-0959.
Hey, all you can do is just tell the truth and trust in the American people that over time they're going to know what the truth is.
Yes, it is time for the truth. Right here, right now. This is the Conservative Syndicate. Real conservative talk from real conservatives. With your host, John Matthews.
The latter-day prophet. Saying against the hypocrisies of our time.
And Joe Akos.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
The Conservative Syndicate is comprised of some of the most informed pundits and activists available today. Together, we seek to tear down the imaginary wall, a separation between church and state through education, information, and engagement on the religion of politics and the politics of religion. And now, your host on the globally syndicated Conservative Syndicate, John Matthews and Joe Hakos.
And we are back. We're back. Hour 2 right here at the Conservative Syndicate, Real Conservative Talk from Real Conservatives. We hope you enjoyed our first hour. Margaret Thatcher addressing Congress back in 2013 and her last public speech. And we have more for you right now because in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we are so grateful God has heard our prayers to stop the arterial bleeding known as progressivism and hope He continues to provide us the path back to becoming once again one nation under God. So we have been offering you a special segment or a special series called Great Speeches and Debates of Days Past. In the first hour, as I said, Margaret Thatcher addressing Congress in 2015, along with her final public speech just 16 days before England held their elections back in 2001. In this segment, we want to feature a great friend of the Conservative Syndicate who has also served as a part-time contributor to our forum, that is comedian Evan Sayet, and his speech given at Heritage Foundation on March 5th, 2007, just before the election of Barack Obama, which has been billed as the most listened to speech given ever at the Heritage Foundation. So now, for your listening pleasure, comedian Evan Sayet.
Let me tell you my story. I call myself a 913 Republican. I grew up a liberal New York Jew. You don't get much more liberal than that, though it was lowercase l, not what's considered liberal today. Graduated from high school knowing one thing about politics, basically, that Democrats are good and Republicans are evil. I tell a story. It's not a true story, but I think it kind of clarifies what happened to me. I say, imagine being in a restaurant with an old friend, and you're catching up, and suddenly he blurts out, "I hate my wife." And you kind of chuckle to yourself because he says it every time you're together, and you know he doesn't hate his wife. They've been together for 35 years. He loves his daughters, and they're just like her. No, he doesn't hate his wife. And you're having some dinner, and you look out the window, and you spot his wife out the window, and she's being beaten up. And you grab your friend, you say, come on, let's help her. Let's help your wife. And he says, nah, I'm sure she deserves it. At that moment, it dawns on you, he really does hate his wife. Well, that's what 9/11 was to me. I would hear my friends from the left say how evil and horrible and racist and imperialistic and oppressive America is, and I'd laugh to myself, they always say that. They love America. And then on 9/11, we were beaten up. And I grabbed him by the collar, I jumped up and said, come on, let's help her, let's help America. And they said, no, she deserves it. And at that moment, I realized they really do hate America. And it began me on what's now a 5+ year quest to try to understand the mindset. How could you possibly live in the freest nation in the history of the world and see only oppression? How could you live in the least imperialist power in human history and see us as the ultimate in imperialism? How can you live in the least bigoted nation in human history and, as Joe Biden said, see racism lurking in every dark shadow? And over the next 5 years, what I came to think through, what I came to learn, what I came to find in conversations and became this talk, and hopefully very, very soon will be the book Regurgitating the Apple, How Modern Liberals Think. See, I've got to assume that just about everybody in this room agrees that the Democrats are wrong on just about every issue. Well, I'm here to propose to you it's not just about every issue, it's quite literally every issue. And it's not just wrong, it's as wrong can be. It's 180 degrees from right. It is diametrically opposed to that which is good, right, and successful. Right, what I discovered is that this is not an accident. This is part of a philosophy that now dominates the whole of Western Europe. And the Democratic Party of today, I, like some others, call it modern liberalism. And the modern liberal will invariably side with evil over good, wrong over right, and the behaviors that lead to failure over those that lead to success. Give the modern liberal the choice between Saddam Hussein and the United States. He will not only side with Saddam Hussein, he will slander America and Americans in order to do so. Give him the choice between the vicious mass murdering, corrupt terrorist dictator Yasser Arafat and the tiny and wonderful democracy of Israel. He will plagiarize maps, forged documents, engaged in blood libels, as did our former president Jimmy Carter, to side with the terrorist organizations and to attack the tiny state. It's not just foreign policy, it's domestic policy, it's every policy. Given the choice between promoting teenage abstinence and teenage promiscuity, and believe me, I know this from my hometown of Hollywood, they will use their movies, their TV shows, their songs, even the schools, to promote teenage promiscuity as if it's cool. Like the movie American Pie, in which you are a loser unless you've had sex with your best friend's mother while you're still a child. While conversely, NARAL, a pro-abortion group masquerading as a pro-choice group, will hold a fundraiser called F Abstinence. And it's not just F, it's the entire word, because promoting vulgarity is part of their agenda. So the question becomes why? How do they think they're making a better world? Well, the first thing that comes into your mind when trying to understand, as I've so desperately tried to understand, is that if they side always with evil, then they must be evil. But we have a problem with this, don't we? We all know too many people who fit this category who aren't evil. Many of my lifelong friends, the people I grew up with, relatives, close relatives. And they're not evil. So if they're not evil, then the next place your mind goes is, well, they must just be incredibly stupid. Right? They don't mean to always side with evil, failed, and wrong. They just don't know what they're doing. But we have a problem with this as well. You can't say Bill Maher is a stupid man, my old boss. You can't say Ward Churchill is a stupid man. You can't say all these academics are stupid people. And frankly, if it was just stupidity, they'd be right more often. Now, what's the expression? Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Even a blind squirrel finds an acorn now and again. So if they're not stupid and they're not evil, what's their plan? How do they think they're making a better world? By siding with Saddam Hussein, by keeping his rape and torture rooms open, by seeking the destruction of a democracy of Jews. That I don't know if you've seen a list going around the internet of all the Nobel Prize-winning scientists from this tiny state of Israel. How do they think they're making a better world by promoting to children behaviors that are inappropriate and cause diseases and unwanted pregnancies and ruin people's lives? How do they think they're making a better world? What I discovered is the modern liberal looks back on, give me a number here, 50,000 years, 100,000 years of human civilization, and knows only one thing for sure, that none of the ideas that mankind has come up with, none of the religions, none of the philosophies, none of the ideologies, none of the forms of government, none have succeeded in creating a world devoid of war, poverty, crime, and injustice. So they're convinced that since all of these ideas of man have proved to be wrong, the real cause of war, poverty, crime, and injustice must be found, can only be found in the attempt to be right. See, if nobody ever thought they were right, what would we disagree about? If we didn't disagree, surely we wouldn't fight. If we didn't fight, of course, we wouldn't go to war. Without war, there'd be no poverty. Without poverty, there'd be no crime. Without crime, there'd be no injustice. It's a utopian vision. And all that's required to usher in this utopia is the rejection of all fact, reason, evidence, logic, truth, morality, and decency. All the tools that you and I use in our attempts to be better people, to make the world more right, by trying to be right, by siding with right, by recognizing what is right and moving towards it. You know, when this first started to dawn on me, I would take this out and question my liberal friends, and believe me, there were plenty of them in Hollywood. The thing about Hollywood is it is overwhelmingly liberal, uppercase L, not lowercase l. But there are a lot more of us than you would suspect, but they're afraid. And it's hard to come out because what's so Orwellian, and virtually everything about this philosophy is Orwellian, is that the liberals are as illiberal as you can imagine. And quite literally, as much as they scream McCarthyism constantly, there is in fact a gray list there that sees people not get hired because they don't toe the leftist line. So what you have is people who think that the best way to eliminate rational thought, the best way to eliminate the attempt to be right, is to work always to prove that right isn't right, and to prove that wrong isn't wrong, to bring about a philosophy, and you see this in John Lennon's song, Imagine. Imagine there's no countries. Not imagine great countries. Not imagine defeat the Nazis. Imagine no religions. And the key line is, imagine a time when anything and everything that mankind values is devalued to the point where there's nothing left to kill or die for. See, now obviously this is not going to happen overnight. There's still going to be religions, but they're going to do their best to denigrate them. There's still going to be countries, but they'll do what they can to get us to cede our national sovereignty to one world bodies. But in the meantime, everything that they believe is designed. Everything they teach in our schools, everything they make into movies, the messages of the movies, the TV shows, the newspaper stories that they pick and how they spin them have but one criterion for truth, beauty, honesty, etc., etc., and that's, does it tear down what is good and elevate what is evil? Does it tear down what is right and elevate what is wrong? Does it tear down the behaviors that lead to success and elevate the ones that lead to failure till there's nothing left to believe in?
This is the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. We hope you are enjoying tonight's segment of great speeches and debates of days past. We'll be right back after these brief messages.
Red State Talk Radio, WRS Cleveland.
Hey, I'll make you a deal. Give me 60 seconds and I'll give you directions to the Fountain of Youth. Okay, I'm joking. Well, kind of joking. No fountains, but youth, I got Nature's Youth and their premier anti-aging product, Nature's Youth RSF. With your sensible diet and exercise plan, Nature's Youth RSF can help you look and feel better. RSF is an all-natural amino acid supplement that supports your body to naturally increase HGH levels without any synthetic hormones. And elevated HGH levels can contribute to increased energy, improved libido, reduced body fat, and improved exercise capacity. Let's be honest, who doesn't want to look and feel younger? Visit the newly designed website at naturesyouth.com or call 800-333-6923. That's 800-333-6923 and like them on Facebook and you'll be included in contests and exclusive offers. What a deal. Oh, speaking of deals, my time's about up. 800-333-6923 or naturesyouth.com. Who needs a fountain anyway? Call today.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
When I had a heart attack at 42, I was not sure what the future held. But a year later, the doctors could find nothing wrong with me and took me off all my medication. What did I do? I took a herbal mixture of garlic, cayenne, and a few other herbs mixed in liquid form. I now call this Extendovite. I would have never believed that a few simple herbs could actually change my life like they did. Now it's your turn to see what the powers of garlic and cayenne can do for you. For only $69.95 plus shipping and handling for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid, you too can begin on your path to better health. For more information, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit our website at heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
I've owned my company for 14 years now, and I can tell you that payroll is a 4-letter word. I hate doing it. It eats up hours I don't have, and it costs me money I could be saving. But my accountant's too expensive, and I'm not sure who to call, but I know I need help.
We're Paychex, and we take all the hassles out of small business payroll. We save you time and money. It's easy. Call, fax, or give us your payroll information securely online, and we take care of the rest. We calculate the correct taxes, manage payments and direct deposits. We even send out your checks. Payroll doesn't need to be a 4-letter word anymore. We're so sure that we can save you time and money that we'll give you a month's payroll free. Just for calling 877-663-3830. Get 1 month's payroll for free. Call Paychex right now. 877-663-3830. That's 877-663-3830.
Hey, I don't back anybody unless I believe in them. And I do believe in the value of investing in gold and silver. And the company I trust to buy my gold and silver from is Swiss America. I've been working with them for nearly a decade. I trust them, and you can too. Swiss America will help you sort through and find the best options available when you're considering investing in gold and silver coins. Listen, for over 30 years, Swiss America has been offering Americans what they want in their investments: safety, liquidity, quality, reliability, and a potential profit. Gold and silver have a place in every investor's portfolio. So, why not let Swiss America help you diversify your investment portfolio now? Call now for free information. 800-978-3907. 800-978-3907. 800-978-3907. 800-978-3907.
Hey, Bugsy, you hear the news about Vinny?
Yeah, it's a real shame he owed money to the IRS and they finally cut up with him.
Just like Al Capone.
If the IRS can get to Capone, imagine what they can do to little old Vinny, huh?
Poor cat, he was on top of the world, then bada boom, bada bing.
What Vinny needs now is an offer he can't refuse.
Hey, you got a tax problem? Does the IRS claim you owe them a bunch of dough? They can get you too. So call the tax relief line now and learn if you qualify to negotiate your $10,000 plus IRS tax debt for up to a 75% savings. Don't be like Al or Vinny and get busted. Make this free call now. Learn how you may be able to pay the IRS less.
Call now. 866-657-8474. 866-657-8474. 866-657-8474. 866-657-8474.
This is the Conservative Syndicate, real conservative talk from real conservatives. We hope you are enjoying tonight's segment of great speeches and debates of days past. And now let's return to Evan Sayet speaking at the Heritage Foundation, March 5th, 2007.
So you guys might recognize this as the paradigm and the purpose of one of the most successful liberal motion pictures of all time, Fahrenheit 9/11. See, there's nobody, and I'm always told, don't say nobody, don't say always, don't say... There's nobody who believes Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11 was an honest attempt to accurately portray the real events of that horrific day and its aftermath. Everybody knows that Michael Moore is a leftist, and that it was a propaganda film in which the facts were cherry-picked, the evidence manipulated, the narrative near lunatic, all designed for one purpose. The question that we were debating at the time is, should we go to war against the Iraqi government, against Saddam Hussein? So he used all of the tricks and manipulations and lies that he could to show that America isn't that good, America is not worth fighting for, to show that Saddam Hussein isn't that evil, not worth fighting against, for the purpose of undermining our efforts to go to war. Again, there's quite literally nothing in Hollywood, in the newspapers, in our schools, that does not have this as its sole criterion. For example, there is no journalistic standard, none, zero, zilch, by which the misdeeds of a handful of night guards at an obscure prison for terrorists, misdeeds in which nobody was killed, nobody was seriously hurt, there is no journalistic standard by which this is a front page story in the New York Times, much less for 2 days in a row. 5 days in a row, 10 days in a row, 20 days, 44 straight days, this non-story was a front-page story in the New York Times. Why? Because while it met no journalistic standard, it met the one and only modern liberal standard. It said, you think America's good? We found something that's going to make you not believe that any longer. You think that the Islamic fascists are bad? No, 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 no. This is why they do it. No wonder they fly airplanes into our buildings. And that's just one of so many other examples. Newsweek magazine, there was no journalistic standard by which they printed the story of Korans being flushed down the toilet. Not only was it a bogus story, never happened, it's an impossible story. It cannot happen. Think about it. Can you flush a book down the toilet? Right? Try it. Go home and try it. And if there are any liberals here, go to your neighbor's house and borrow a book. And see. But the thing is, even a child, did you just get here, sir? Should I start over? At any rate, even a 5-year-old would know that you can't flush a book down the toilet the first day that he plays that puzzle at school. You can't fit a square peg into a round hole. So why did Newsweek run with a story that was not only bogus, that failed to meet even the most obvious logic? I mean, as I say, it's an old expression. You can't fit a square peg into a round hole, because nothing matters to them. There is no standard, because a standard would require them to say something is better than something else, which goes against this entire philosophy. It met the one and only criterion of truth to Newsweek, which was that it attacked America and justified the Islamic fascist terrorists. And you see this, the same thing's true in the art world. There is no artistic standard. There's no aesthetic criterion by which, forgive me, but a jar of urine with a cross in it is beautiful. There's no aesthetic criterion by which the curators of the museum said, yeah, take down the Monet and put up the urine. But it met the one and only standard of art that exists to the modern liberal. And just as in Hollywood, the movies last year, I don't want to speak to the movies that were nominated this year because I didn't see them all, but the movies from last year met no criterion of storytelling, met no criterion of cinematography. The 5 nominees for Best Picture all met one criterion. Brokeback Mountain said, heterosexual marriage isn't that important, go be a homosexual if you choose. Munich said there is no difference between the terrorists and the people who stopped them from murdering again. And if you look at the other pictures as well, ultimately with Crash winning, Crash said America's this evil, horrible nation where every moment of every day is filled with bigotry and racism. I'm going to repeat it probably for a third time now because it's so important. It's so hard to really accept. But there truly is no standard, no criterion for truth, beauty, justice, or anything else amongst the modern liberal, the dominant force in today's Democratic Party. Not all Democrats. Okay, there are words for Democrats who have standards. It's called Republicans. And it's true. I mean, there are a good many of us who have come to become Republicans and then conservatives. And even not, there are some who are still Democrats. Tammy Bruce is a lesbian feminist, former president of NOW's largest chapter, who recognizes, well, you know what, at a minimum standard, let's stop the people who want to hack off our heads. That's a starting point. There are people who get it. The thing is this, clearly not everyone. Are you guys with me, by the way? Talk to me. I'm here. It's live. It's just so austere. It's the Heritage Foundation. Now, clearly not everybody who voted for John Kerry, not everyone, like I say my cousin, but I'll be honest with you, it's my sister, who will mindlessly accept, without question, without doubt, that of course we went into Iraq to steal their oil, because that's what America does. No need to even consider any other possibility. That's how sure she is that America is imperialist and we steal resources and whatnot. Not everyone who voted for John Kerry and who fits that description is aware of the elite's blueprint for utopia. That's what I call it. But what the elite have succeeded in doing, and by the way, I don't think they would support it if they were. I don't think my cousin would trade off supporting evil, failure, and wrong for some promise of a future utopia. But what the elite have succeeded in doing through the institutions we've allowed them to control, and if we're going to save America, we must take back the schools, the universities, the media, the entertainment industry. What the elite have succeeded in doing is indoctrinating, starting with the very young and going all the way up through college and beyond, starting the first time they turn on Sesame Street and Buster Bunny, going up through the middle years when they're told, hey, little boy, if you have a queer eye, you're going to be a cool guy. But hey, little girl, doesn't matter how cool you are. If you grow up to be a heterosexual married woman, you're going to be a desperate housewife. And going all the way up into all the other shows that are on the air, I can't say all, but so many of the other shows that are on the air that show family and marriage and all the things that are traditional that we recognize as good. There's the war at home. There's terms of engagement. There's another, it's not terms, it's rules of engagement, as if it's another battle. They wouldn't make room for daddy in shows like those because they were not realistic. So instead we now have the Bundys, where the mother and the father hate each other and looking to get as much as they can from each other. And just this whole mindset. And it continues on through Ward Churchill's ethnic studies class. And what happens is they're indoctrinated into what I call a cult of indiscriminateness. And the way the elite does this is by teaching our children, starting with the very young, that rational and moral thought is an act of bigotry. That no matter how sincerely you may seek to gather the facts, no matter how earnestly you may look at the evidence, no matter how disciplined you may try to be in your reasoning, your conclusion is going to be so tainted by your personal bigotries, by your upbringing, by your religion, by the color of your skin, by the nation of your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather's birth, that no matter what your conclusion, it is useless. It is nothing other than a reflection of your bigotries. And therefore the only way to eliminate bigotry is to eliminate rational thought. You know, there's a brilliant book out there, and those of you who know it will recognize how heavily informed my opinion is by it. It's called The Closing of the American Mind by Professor Alan Bloom. And Professor Bloom was trying to figure out, I'm going to be blunt, he was a little less blunt, he was trying to figure out in the 80s why his students were suddenly so stupid. And what he came to was the realization, the recognition, that they'd been raised to believe that indiscriminateness is a moral imperative, because its opposite is the evil of having discriminated. Right? I paraphrase this in my own works. I say, in order to eliminate discrimination, the modern liberal has opted to become utterly indiscriminate. I'll give you an example. At the airports, in order to not discriminate, we have to intentionally make ourselves stupid. We have to intentionally pretend we don't know some of the things we do know. And we have to pretend that the next person who's likely to blow up an airplane is as much the 87-year-old Swedish great-great-grandmother as those 4 27-year-old imams newly arrived from Syria screaming Allah Akbar just before they board the plane. In order to eliminate discrimination, the modern liberal has opted to become utterly indiscriminate. The problem is, of course, that the ability to discriminate, to thoughtfully choose the better of the available options, as in she's a discriminating shopper, is the essence of rational thought. So quite literally, we are dealing with the whole of Western Europe and today's Democratic Party, dominated as it is by this philosophy, that rejects rational thought as a hate crime. So what you're left with after 10, 12, 14, 20 years in the leftist indoctrination centers that our schools have become are citizens of voting age who, on the one hand, are utterly unwilling and incapable of critically judging the merits of the positions they hold, and have held unquestioned since they're 5 years old, since they first entered the leftist indoctrination process. All right, this is important to me because that sounds impossible. I mean, are you saying that they have the mentality of 5-year-olds? You know, that sounds like hyperbole, and I've tried to avoid hyperbole. It sounds perhaps, as a gratuitous slander. There was a book that came out at just about the same time as Professor Bloom's that in some ways even better describes and explains the mindset of the modern liberal. It was called All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And it reads like the Bible of modern liberalism and the playbook of Democratic Party policy. Yes, of course, you'll notice in the title, he doesn't say, Robert Fulghum doesn't say, all I know I learned in kindergarten. Of course, Bill Maher has learned a good number of things, including bigger words. But the concepts that he still holds dear, that he learned in kindergarten. So yeah, the sentence fragment, don't hit, which is one of the lessons that Fulghum refers to, has morphed into an entire sentence now that they're adults. It's war is not the answer. And of course they've learned things in between, but they didn't really need to know anything. Because even though they know about, I'm going to say Ward Churchill, Neville Chamberlain, they know about Neville Chamberlain, they know about what happens if you appease evil. They don't really need to know it, because knowing it or not knowing it would not have changed the position they have now and have held unquestioned since they're 5. When I was 5 years old, I used to go around the neighborhood trick-or-treating with my friends. On Halloween, not every day. And and we'd have in one hand a bag for candy, and the other hand a little box with a slit on top for nickels and dimes and pennies for UNICEF, for the United Nations. Right? Because at 5 years old, the United Nations is a terrific thing. Don't hit, talk. Another lesson from Robert Fulghum is share everything. Well, yeah, we'll share power, we'll share our wealth, we'll pay for the United Nations, let's talk things out. What a lovely, wonderful thing. Then you turn 10, 15, 20, and you learn some things about the United Nations that change your opinion. You learn about the corruption, you learn about the anti-Semitism, you learn about they ran away from the genocide in Rwanda, have done nothing about the Sudanese genocide, in fact made the Sudanese members of the Human Rights Commission while they were committing this genocide. And you and I change our position because these are things we really need to know. Yet they will maintain their 5-year-old's position, their belief that the United Nations is this great, wonderful thing, and completely ignore everything they've learned since. And quite literally are locked into, there was a song that came out at about this time, it was called Goodbye Stranger by a group called Supertramp, because, being a tramp is super. And in it, this guy and this girl hook up, and they shack up together for a couple of weeks, and apparently things are pretty wonderful until she says something like, honey, we've run out of food, why don't you go to the supermarket, and we could do this for another week or two. He says, I should go shopping? No, that's not my paradise. No, I'm leaving. And as he's walking out the door, he says to her, now I believe that what you say is the undisputed truth, but I have to see things my own way just to keep me in my youth. And that is so much the mindset of the modern liberals. It's not that they're not aware of all the things that we're aware of. It's that they need to reject them in order to remain in this 5-year-old utopia that they've been told is the only hope for mankind. A mindless indiscriminateness. So what you're left with is not only adults, citizens of voting age who cannot judge their own positions, but who are virulently antagonistic to any position other than their own. Why? Because when you've been brought up to believe that indiscriminateness is a moral imperative, any position other than their own must have employed discrimination. This is why Bush is Hitler. This is why Reagan is Hitler. This is why Giuliani is Hitler. How's Rudolph Giuliani like Hitler to a thinking person? Well, in one way. Hitler discriminated against the Jews. Rudolph Giuliani discriminated against the crack-addicted prostitutes in Times Square. Hitler discriminated against the Catholics. Giuliani discriminated against the criminal overlords. Right? Hitler discriminated against the gypsies. Giuliani discriminated against the terrorists on 9/11 and beyond. See, any form of discrimination is discrimination. They know that theirs is the position arrived at through the moral imperative of indiscriminateness. Therefore, any position other than their own must have been arrived at through the employment of discrimination. So this makes you not just wrong on your issues and your stances. They don't even think about your issues and your stances. They don't have to. Even if they were willing to, even if they were able to, they don't need to. You know, would you sit and contemplate Hitler's social security policy? No, you would fight Hitler. So what you're left with is, after 10, 12, 14, 20 years in these indoctrination centers, and it's not a coincidence, the longer you stay in the indoctrination process, the more morally inverted you become. Until, to be head of the ethnic studies department, you have to argue that the Islamic fascist terrorists are the good guys, and the victims of 9/11 were all little Eichmanns. Right? So what you're left with is people who quite literally cannot differentiate between good and evil, right and wrong, better and worse. But here's the key. Indiscriminateness of thought does not lead to indiscriminateness of policy. Indiscriminateness of thought invariably leads the modern liberal, inevitably leads them to side with evil over good, wrong over right, and the behaviors that lead to failure over those that lead to success. Why? Because in a world where you are indiscriminate, where no behavior is to be deemed better or worse than any other, then your expectation is that all behavior should lead to equally good outcomes. When in the real world, different behaviors lead to different outcomes. You and I know why. Because we think. We know why teenage promiscuity in communities that promote promiscuity tend to fail at a greater rate than communities that promote teenage abstinence. Because teenage promiscuity and teenage abstinence are not the same behaviors. Teenage abstinence is a better behavior. I forget the moral component for a moment. Let's just talk practicalities. If your boy's out messing around, he's not home reading a book. If your daughter's down at the abortion mill again, she's not at the library studying for the SATs. If your son's in a hospital bed somewhere dying of AIDS, he's not putting together his 5-year plan. So you and I recognize why those communities that promote teenage abstinence do better than those that promote teenage promiscuity in their music, in their movies, even in the schools. But to the modern liberal who cannot make that judgment, must not make that judgment, that would be discriminating. They have no explanation. So therefore, the only explanation for success has to be that somehow success has cheated. Success, simply by its existence, is proof positive to the modern liberal of some kind of chicanery and likely bigotry. Failure, simply by its existence, no other evidence needed, just the fact that it has failed is enough proof to them that failure has been victimized. So the mindless foot soldier, which is what I call the non-elite, will support the elite's blueprint for utopia, will side with evil over good, wrong over right, and the behaviors that lead to failure over those that lead to success, and have a sense of justice. This is why I said at the beginning, they're not evil. My cousin is not evil. But it's just a mindless acceptance that in a world where she's indiscriminate, where her answer to any political question is, so what? Without any true Socratic desire to have that so what lead to, yeah, let's talk about the real consequences. So what just being an indiscriminate rejection of any possibility about the future. It's meaningless to them. And it's why John Lennon said utopia was all the people living for today. And by the way, it is not a coincidence that those who live for today now have so much debt. What is debt? It's the failure to repay a promise from yesterday. And vote themselves nothing but more and more entitlements, which is what? Stuff for me, I'll worry about who pays for it later. The same is true of good and evil. Since nothing can be deemed good, nothing can be deemed evil, that which society does recognize as good must be the beneficiary of some sort of prejudice. That which society recognizes as evil must be the victim of that prejudice. So again, the mindless foot soldier will invariably side with whatever policy, mindlessly accept whatever policy seems to tear down what is good, America, Israel, Walmart. Elevate what is evil until everything meets in the middle and there's nothing left to fight about. Folks, let's take an issue in the news and let's think like a modern liberal. And you will see how once you subscribe, once you've been indoctrinated into this mindset, there is no other choice. Remember I said it was inevitable. Once you belong to this cult of indiscriminateness, there is no other conclusion you can come to than that good is evil and that evil is the victim of good. We all know it's standard practice, in fact it's official policy at the leftist media outlets to never call Islamic Jihad, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Aqsa's Martyrs Brigade, or any of the other Islamic fascist terror groups around the world terrorists. And you know why, you've heard it a million times. In fact, it's even in one of the official memos from, I forget the news organization, probably the Times, to the reporters ordering them not to use the appropriate word. And that reason is, hey, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Who are we to employ critical, rational judgment? But if one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, see, you and I can tell the difference. We, at least as a very minimum standard, can't we at least agree that in order to be called a freedom fighter, you have to be fighting for freedom? Yeah. Right? We know what Osama bin Laden is fighting for. He's told us. It's not freedom. It's an oppressive theocracy in which women are covered from head to toe. And unless we all change to his religion, we are considered the offspring of pigs and monkeys. You know, you'd think at least we'd have PETA on our side. I figured it was time for a joke. Just in case some of you have been fooled going, he's not that funny. We expected something very different. But quite literally, being indiscriminate leaves people like Cindy Sheehan and Michael Moore, they will call Osama bin Laden a freedom fighter. Because quite literally, being indiscriminate leaves them unable to tell the difference between freedom and having your head hacked off. That is quite literally how sick this mentality is. All right, so if there is no objective difference between the terrorist and the freedom fighter, then why is it that you and I in our schools teach that George Washington is a hero and Yasser Arafat and Saddam Hussein are villains? See, you and I know why, because we think George Washington risked his personal fortune to personally lead his troops into battle. Battles fought nobly against other uniformed warriors for the purpose of creating the freest nation in the history of the world. Pretty noble, pretty heroic stuff. Yasser Arafat, on the other hand, stole his people's money, sent 14-year-olds out to fight his battles. Battles fought against kids and women and civilians in pizza parlors and at Passover ceremonies and whatnot, all for the purpose of maintaining his corrupt dictatorship. Pretty villainous stuff. But to the folks at the New York Times who have established as official policy that there is no objective difference between the terrorist and the freedom fighter, why do we teach our children that George Washington is a hero? The only possible explanation is because he's a white Christian of European descent. If there is no difference between the behaviors of the terrorists, then why do we teach that Yasser Arafat and Saddam Hussein are villains? There can be no other reason than that darker-skinned Muslims of Middle Eastern birth. So when push comes to shove, and after 18 United Nations resolutions and 10 years of having our airplanes shot at in direct violation of our very clear agreements, after Saddam Hussein had invaded Iran and invaded Kuwait, bombed Saudi Arabia and bombed Israel, committed atrocities against the Kurds in the north and committing genocide against the Marsh Arabs in the south, we finally and reluctantly go to war to liberate those poor people. You and I know why. Because we think. Because we make critical, rational, moral judgments. But to the modern liberal, to the mindless, to those who cannot discriminate between these behaviors, the only possible explanation for us going to war is some nefarious cause because we're evil and Saddam Hussein therefore is a victim. And they will rush there, as we've seen, and act as human shields to protect his rape rooms and his torture chambers, because they won't judge rape rooms and torture chambers. That requires judgment. And if you listened to the chants of the mindless minions, they march down the street in their anti-America rallies, which the forged document users in the leftist press euphemistically called anti-war rallies, you could hear their chant, 1, 2, 3, 4, we don't want your racist war. What race exactly comprises Iraq? What are they talking about? They don't know. There's not a clue. It's not a factual statement. It's not an accurate statement. Wait a second. Didn't we just recently go to war to protect Muslims in Kuwait? Didn't we bomb the Christians of Europe to protect the Muslims of Europe? I mean, what is this based on? It's based on the reality that once you subscribe to indiscriminateness, anything other than indiscriminateness is the evil of having discriminated. All right, well, I'm open for questions. Do we have any questions? I'm going to be leading it? Sure. Yes. We have a microphone approaching.
I did note you repeatedly used the term modern liberal. When you go back in time, how do you view other definitions of liberal, religiously, when liberals were called bleeding hearts relating to Jesus Christ, and in classical intellectual thought, I know a lot of libertarians today like to call themselves liberal in the classical sense. How do you view modern liberalism with past liberalism?
Okay, and just to be clear, normally I would refer to the difference between lowercase l and uppercase L, simply because I refer to these people as modern liberals. I do that because it did come out of the liberal, what we thought was the liberal tradition, but went a new direction. So I needed a way to both distinguish them as having a history, but that what they are now is very different than what they were. In fact, modern liberalism, uppercase L, is about as illiberal a philosophy that we've had in America. And though it's not quite yet gotten as violent as some others have, I fear that it's on its way. The one thing, as you go back through time, there was always a sense that we were trying to work towards something. There was a belief that there was something better than what came before. This modern liberalism is nihilism in a lot of ways, and while they will constantly argue, question authority, question your government, don't trust your neighbors, don't trust Walmart, everybody's out to get you, they don't really replace it with anything. And so there is no thing to aim for that then you can make a judgment as to whether that's a truly good thing to do. I think more than anything, missing from modern liberalism is anything other than its destructive nature. It tears down the authority of people in the schools, the authorities of the old textbooks and whatnot, the heroism of the people that we would look up to and teach our children to look up to, but replaces it with nothing. Is that fair?
Well, do you have any more?
No, that's it.
On the past, do you respect liberals of the past? Or you?
Oh, you know what? In a lot of ways, John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, just to go back to what would be my distant past. You're talking about the 70s being their distant past. The 60s would be my distant past. There was always a liberal tradition in America, starting with the Founding Fathers and prior, that was accepting of, look, it's very, very, very rare that the majority would cede so many rights and recognize that the rights came to everybody and that they didn't come from the powers here but came from a greater power than ourselves. I mean, the powers that the minorities have in America and have always had in America, and I include myself as a Jew amongst the minorities, is unprecedented in human history, and that was true liberalism. The fact that it wasn't forced upon people, that free speech, and these things that we're losing now, like free speech in our schools and whatnot, is the opposite of what the liberalism was, whether there was a D next to John Kennedy's name or not. Some of the same values that were liberal back in the 60s are conservative now. I'll give you as an example, a colorblind society. That remains a liberal concept. Unfortunately, it's not from the modern liberal uppercase L point of view.
Hi. Owen Graham, intern here at Foreign Policy at Heritage.
Hey, Owen, how are you?
Thank you very much for this talk. I was happily surprised and so glad that you mentioned...
What did you expect, like a rubber chicken?
No. No, I loved everything, but right when you got to Alan Bloom's book, I couldn't believe it, because I think this is one of the most pivotal books, The Closing of the American Mind.
Yeah.
The other book that brought so many people into conservatism was, of course, The Road to Serfdom. Mm-hmm. But this book is also mentioned by Bork and a whole bunch of other people, a lot of very famous conservatives.
Yeah.
But I think this is the main, what you're touching on, your expansion on Bloom's book and everything I needed to know.
I put Bloom in this place, didn't I?
Yeah. I think you've come to the nexus of what we as conservatives confront, because it really is a revolution. As Bloom puts it, it's changing everything from a rights society to the privileging of differences and the lack of being capable of making decisions based on principles. Right. The only principle is that you can't discriminate.
Right.
You can't discriminate against anything. And so it really is the failure of thought.
Right. And again, if I may, it's indiscriminateness of thought doesn't just lead to sometimes being right. It actually is a philosophy that has an inevitable conclusion, which is, Bloom talks about seeking the good. And that's what we try to do. It doesn't mean we're always right, doesn't mean we always get there, doesn't mean we don't stumble along the way. But without a recognition of good, then how do you progress towards good? Which puts the lie to the concept that modern liberalism is progressive in any fashion. If they have nothing to progress towards, if there is no good, then they are forcing every single generation to not only reinvent the wheel, but to fight every battle we've ever fought to get to this great nation, this great time that we're in.
Well, I thank you, and I hope you're counseling some of some of the conservative candidates to bring this up, because I think it has permeated everything.
It is. It is quite literally everything. That's why I didn't hesitate at the beginning to say, my people tell me don't say always. It is quite literally everything. It is the only standard in Hollywood. It's the only standard for journalism. It's the only standard for art. It's the only standard for justice. Everything quite literally is defined. One of the big canards of modern liberalism is this notion of diversity, as if diversity is a virtue. Diversity is not a virtue. Diversity is meaningless. Diversity just means different. Without the critical and moral judgment to say, yes, it's different and good, you are not only not supporting good, but quite literally in a good society, you are invariably supporting evil, failed, and wrong. Because our melting pot melted out some of the failed behaviors, some of the worse, lesser behaviors, some of the, most of them. I mean, that's how we became such a terrific nation, was taking the best and burning aside or leaving aside the rest. Well, that makes it rare. That makes the bad behaviors rare in our society. So to be diverse, you have to promote that which is rare. Common sense and conventional wisdom are both rejected for no other reason that they're common and conventional. So quite literally, you find again the modern liberal championing always that which is the worst. Thank you.
I'd like to play the devil's advocate.
Okay.
Just for the sake of Platonic dialogue or whatever it's called. Alan Nichols, Washington Diplomat Magazine. If Hillary Clinton were here, sitting here, listening to you, trying to be open to you, she would say, you have a perspective, but I also am working toward the good. You say liberals don't work toward the good. But Hillary would say, I want universal health care because I believe that it is best for the American citizens.
Oh, no, absolutely, there's no doubt, and I really did try to stress at the beginning that I don't consider them necessarily evil. I absolutely believe that my sister and others believe that they are working towards the good. The problem is that once you've eliminated critical, rational judgment, once you've eliminated the ability to tell the difference between what works and what doesn't work, once you're coming from a mindset of a 5-year-old, look, when I was 5 years old, 4, I don't want to be called a lying liar by Al Franken, I was 4, not 5. The New York World's Fair closed up in my neighborhood down the street from me. And I insisted that my father buy the monorail that went around the park, because I wanted to put it up alongside the Long Island Expressway and ease congestion and end pollution, because, I was a liberal kid. And he explained to me in grown-up fashion that you couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford it, and technically getting the rights of way and the bureaucracy. And when you have a conversation with a modern liberal about health care, there's no doubt that their goal is as good as mine was, curing air pollution or curing everybody's health problems. But if you don't have the grown-up sense to be able to discuss how, what's the reality, what's the truth, you can't have a conversation where they make the world a better place. It's all fantasy at that point. And again, you're dealing with a 5-year-old, so of course she wants to make the world a better place. Very, very few of us don't. It's a matter of having given up the ability to discriminate. A, they can't bring it about because it's a childish conversation, and B, when you have to make the decisions about who gets certain things, for example, instead of healthcare, let's talk welfare, or healthcare, let's talk illegal aliens. Certain decisions have to be made about who qualifies for it. And when you're just going to indiscriminately give all these benefits, then you're actually going to be assisting that which is most failed, because they're the ones who are going to be most in need. That makes sense? I wasn't thrilled with my answer.
Global warming and Al Gore, you feel?
Well, I'm convinced that global warming is not a position that they've arrived at through an honest and sincere look at the scientific data and the recognition that these models, look, we don't even trust models of weather 3 days down the road on the nightly news, but we're going to trust this one for 50 years down the road and whatnot. I don't think it's an honest attempt to understand global warming. I think it's a plot. What a bad choice of words. I'm going to have a Hillary Clinton thing now. But because in one fell swoop, you can turn America from the greatest nation in the history of the world. Our productivity feeds the world, provides the medicines, and turn America into the most evil nation in the history of the world. Look how much we're destroying the world. It's more of it's accepted more because it's an attack on America as evil polluters than it is because it's scientifically supported. Yes, sir.
Since you're here from Hollywood, let's talk about future. There are conservatives in Hollywood. They just don't want to put their heads out of the hole in the ground. Where do you see us getting ever to the tipping point, or where can we get along the road of retaking?
Yeah. Well, let me tie these two questions together very quickly. One of the things that conservatives recognize is that the answer to problems is progress. And fortunately, progress has seen us, technological progress has seen the conservatives find alternative methods. You know, back in the studio day when you needed to work at the studio and there was no place else to go, but now you have a Mel Gibson who can find unique ways of distributing and promoting, and there's the Liberty Film Festival that my friends run and whatnot. I'm able to promote my shows via the internet and through all kinds of technologies that would have made it impossible just 5 or 7 or 10 years ago. So as more and more channels come on cable, you're going to have more and more opportunities for unique voices. And because we are so incredibly right, they find us. Okay, one more question?
We have one last question? Okay, right here.
Hey, can you talk about the term progressivism, how that's sort of replaced liberalism in a lot of ways as a new way the left talks about themselves and what it means to be a progressive towards what you say is no vision?
Sure. You know, recasting yourself by name is something that, first of all, we know in Hollywood have known. I mean, it's, you know, Rock Hudson. I don't think he was born Rock Hudson and whatnot. What I find interesting is how often what the liberal claims about himself is exactly the opposite of what the truth is. And how they'll, you know, Chris Matthews has a show, Hardball, as if the title is going to tell us what the show really is when it's really quite the opposite. They've come to recognize that people recognize liberalism in its modern form as the policies that have failed our schools, the policies that have failed us as a nation, the policies that have done so little to help the black community get out of the rut that it's been in for the last 40 years in some ways, and that it is a pejorative. And it's funny because the liberal very much recognizes themselves. I remember watching Hannity and Combs, and Sean Hannity said of Nancy Pelosi that she's a San Francisco liberal, and immediately Combs yelled at him that he was trying to demonize her. Well, how do you demonize somebody by stating the facts? Maybe there's a problem here. So suddenly they decide, okay, people have caught on to us about liberalism, now let's call ourselves progressive. We won't be progressive in the slightest. It's just a name. It's an advertising slogan.
All right, well, let's give our a big thank you. Well, that was a rousing beginning to our series on changing culture and bringing people, unique people who've been involved in this cultural battle from outside the Washington, D.C. area. So let me just say before we close today, thank you again for coming. Our next program in this series is going to be on March the 13th. Is that the correct date? March the 13th at 7 o'clock. We're going to have a one-woman show presented by an actress who lived and worked in Hollywood, who's come to Washington, D.C. So we invite you all to come to that. We're going to have a reception at 6:30, and then the show will be at 7 o'clock in the evening here at the Heritage Foundation.
She got a reception and I didn't.
We'll take you to lunch. All right, thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Conservative Syndicate, the nationally acclaimed, globally syndicated, politically incorrect talk show that seeks to tear down the imaginary wall of separation between church and state. We want to make you aware you can find and access all our show archives at our website, theconservativesyndicate.net, as well as our broadcast stations and times. That's theconservativesyndicate.net. We so appreciate you taking the time to tune in, and we so look forward to continuing to bring you the best in uncompromised talk radio available on the net today. And remember, folks, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down in life. It only matters how many times you get up. I'm John Matthews, along with Joe Hako, signing off until next time right here at the Conservative Syndicate. God bless you, and may God continue to bless America.